The Imperial War Room fell silent as the proximity alarms screamed across Zephyria Prime. Admiral Vextar's 4 eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the holographic display showing their capital system. A single red dot pulsed ominously among the thousands of green markers representing the Empire's home fleet. "Report!" Vextar's voice cracked through his translator, his chitinous mandibles clicking with agitation. Lieutenant Creshvier's tentacles trembled as she manipulated the sensor controls. "Sir, we have an unidentified vessel at bearing 27 Mark IV. Distance 12,000 kilometers from the Imperial Palace." The war room erupted in panic chatter. 12,000 kilometers. The human ship sat practically on their doorstep, close enough to see the crystalline spires of the throne world with the naked eye. "Impossible," breathed Commander Nexthor, his scaled hide shifting from blue to pale gray. "Nothing gets past the perimeter nets. Nothing gets past the sensor grids. We have 47 layers of detection systems." Vextar's claws scraped against the command console as he leaned forward. "Classification of the vessel? Sir." Creshvier's voice barely registered above a whisper. "It appears to be human." The word hung in the air like a toxic gas. Human. The primitive bipeds from the outer rim. The species they'd dismissed as technologically inferior savages who barely managed crude faster-than-light travel. "Show me," Vextar commanded. The main display shifted, zooming in on the intruder. The ship that materialized before them defied everything they knew about human engineering. Where their intelligence suggested humans built blocky, inefficient vessels held together with metal plates and desperation, this dreadnought possessed elegant curves that seemed to flow like liquid shadow. Its hull absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making the ship appear as a void-shaped tear in space itself. "Hull length approximately 2 kilometers, Creshvier reported, her voice growing steadier as training took over. "No energy signatures we can identify. No weapon locks detected. It's just sitting there." "Communications?" Vextar asked. "None, sir. They're not responding to any hails on any frequency." Admiral Vextar had commanded the home fleet for 60 cycles. He'd fought the Crystalline Collective, survived the Hive Wars, and personally led the siege that brought the proud Eltarian Republic to its knees. Never in his distinguished career had he felt the cold touch of fear crawling up his spine like this. "How?" he whispered, then louder, "How did they get here?" Commander Nexthor pulled up tactical displays, his claws moving frantically across holographic interfaces. "Reviewing sensor logs now, sir. Checking all entry vectors from the past 12 hours. The displays showed normal traffic patterns. Supply convoys arriving through designated hyperspace corridors. Diplomatic vessels following approved flight paths. Everything orderly, everything expected, everything monitored by the most sophisticated surveillance network in the galaxy. Sir." Nexthor's voice carried a note of hysteria. "There's no record of this ship entering our system. No hyperspace emergence signature. No dimensional displacement readings. According to our sensors, it simply appeared." The implications hit Vextar like a physical blow. If humans possessed technology that could bypass their detection grids entirely, if they could materialize ships at will within the Empire's most secure system, then every assumption about human capabilities was catastrophically wrong. "Alert status?" he barked. "Defense platforms are powering up," reported Lieutenant Creshvier. "Planetary shields at maximum strength. The Emperor's personal guard fleet is moving to intercept." "No!" Vextar's shout echoed through the war room. Every officer turned to stare at him. He realized his error immediately, showing weakness before subordinates, but the damage was done. "Sir." Nexthor ventured carefully. Vextar forced his breathing to steady. If this human ship could appear without warning, what other capabilities might it possess? What if engaging it triggered some unknown weapon system? What if this was merely the first of many? "We observe," he said finally. "Until we understand what we're dealing with, we maintain defensive positions only." The human dreadnought continued its silent vigil, a dark omen hanging in space above the Empire's crown jewel. Inside its mysterious hull, Vextar knew were answers to questions that might reshape everything they thought they knew about the balance of power in the galaxy. But first, they had to survive long enough to ask those questions. "Get me the Emperor," Vextar commanded, "and send word to Imperial Intelligence. I want every file on human technology brought to me immediately." As orders flew and officers scattered, Vextar kept his eyes fixed on the display. The human ship remained motionless, patient as death itself. Waiting, Emperor Cain thus received the emergency transmission while dining on imported delicacies from 17 different conquered worlds. The golden-skinned ruler of 1,000 systems set down his crystalline goblet with deliberate calm, though his inner eyelids flickered with concern. "Repeat that, Admiral," he said to the trembling hologram of Vextar. "Your Majesty, a human dreadnought has appeared within the capital system. It bypassed all our defenses without detection. We don't know how they did it." The Emperor's dining chamber, carved from a single massive gemstone, fell silent except for the gentle hum of anti-gravity generators. The assembled nobles, representatives from the Empire's core worlds, exchanged nervous glances. "Humans," Emperor Cain thus mused, tasting the word like fine wine. "The same humans our intelligence division classified as level 2 primitives?" "Yes, Your Majesty. But this vessel displays technology far beyond anything in our databases." "Show me." The chamber's ceiling transformed into a massive display screen. The human dreadnought materialized above their heads, its dark hull seeming to absorb the light from the room's bioluminescent fixtures. Even projected as a hologram, the ship radiated an unsettling presence. Duchess Valnara, the Empire's Minister of Colonial Affairs, rose from her seat. Her serpentine form undulated with anxiety. "Your Majesty, surely this is some kind of mistake. Humans barely possess coherent governments. They fight amongst themselves constantly. They can't even establish proper mining operations without damaging their own planets." "And yet," the Emperor replied softly, "one of their ships sits 12,000 kilometers from this very palace." The weight of that statement settled over the dining party like a funeral shroud. The Empire's capital world was supposed to be untouchable, protected by fleets that could annihilate entire star systems, defended by technology that made their enemies' strongest weapons look like children's toys. Admiral Vextar's hologram flickered as he consulted with his staff. "Your Majesty, our long-range sensors are detecting unusual readings from the human ship. It appears to be scanning us." "Scanning?" The Emperor's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. "Elaborate." "We're not certain, sire. The energy patterns don't match any known sensor technology. But the readings suggest active data collection on an unprecedented scale." Count Jexmani, the Empire's Director of Strategic Intelligence, leaned forward. His massive bulk made the reinforced chair creak ominously. "Your Majesty, I must point out that our intelligence networks have maintained constant surveillance on human space for the past 50 cycles. They possess no technology capable of this intrusion." "Then explain how they're here," Emperor Cain thus snapped. Silence stretched like a held breath. Finally, Admiral Vextar spoke. "Sire, there's another possibility we must consider." "Which is?" "What if this ship isn't from the humans we've been monitoring?" The dining chamber erupted in startled voices. The Empire's xenobiologists had catalogued every known sapient species in the galaxy. Humans were humans, a single species confined to a small cluster of systems near the galactic rim. "Impossible," Duchess Valnara hissed. "We've mapped their entire territorial expansion. There are no hidden human colonies. Unless," Count Jexmani said slowly, his voice heavy with dawning horror, "we've been watching the wrong humans." Emperor Cain thus felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Genuine uncertainty. The Empire had ruled through superior technology, overwhelming force, and perfect information. If their intelligence was wrong about something as basic as human capabilities, what else might they have missed? "Admiral," he commanded, "have you attempted communication with this vessel?" "Yes, sire." "No response on any frequency." "What about their crew?" "Life sign readings." Vextar hesitated. That's unclear, Your Majesty. The ship's hull appears to block our bioscanners. We can't determine crew size or species composition. A chill ran through the dining chamber. Ships that could hide their crews suggested stealth technology far beyond anything the Empire possessed. The humans, or whoever they truly were, had kept their greatest secrets well hidden. Your orders, sire? Admiral Vextar asked. Emperor Cain thus stood slowly, his ceremonial robes rustling like storm winds. Every eye in the chamber fixed on him, waiting for the wisdom that had built and maintained the greatest empire in galactic history. But for the first time in his long reign, Cain thus found himself without easy answers. The human ship represented more than a security breach. It was a crack in the foundation of everything they believed about their place in the universe. Maintain surveillance, he said finally, but do not engage. Not yet. Sire. If they wanted to attack, Admiral, they would have done so already. They're here for a reason. Until we understand what that reason is, we wait. The Emperor's words carried across the chamber, across space to the waiting fleet, and into history itself. Unknown to the assembled nobles, this moment would be remembered as the beginning of the end, the first time the Empire chose patience over strength. Above them all, the human Dreadnought continued its silent watch. Captain Sarah-chan stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the organized chaos of the Imperial fleet through the viewport. Her dark eyes reflected the distant lights of enemy vessels as they scrambled into defensive positions. After 18 months of careful planning, they had finally reached the heart of the empire that had enslaved half the galaxy. Captain, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. Imperial fleet is maintaining defensive perimeter. No aggressive movements detected. They're scared, observed Commander Park from the engineering station. Good. They should be. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Prometheus represented everything the Empire didn't know about human ingenuity. While they'd been watching humanity's outer colonies, dismissing them as primitive traders and miners, the real human civilization had been developing in secret. Status on the stealth field? She asked. Holding steady, Captain, Park confirmed. The quantum displacement matrix is operating within normal parameters. As far as their sensors know, we simply don't exist until we choose to exist. The technology was humanity's greatest achievement, a fusion of quantum mechanics and dimensional engineering that allowed ships to exist between layers of reality. The Empire sensors couldn't detect what wasn't technically in their dimension. Communications. Any response to our presence? Chief Petty Officer Kim shook her head. They've tried hailing us on 17 different frequencies. We're maintaining communications blackout as ordered. Sarah nodded. Phase 1 of Operation Revelation was proceeding perfectly. They had demonstrated humanity's ability to penetrate the Empire's strongest defenses. Now came the more dangerous part. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's intercom. Prepare for Phase 2. Remember, we're not here to start a war. We're here to end one. The Prometheus had been built in the shadow of Pluto, constructed by the descendants of Earth's best and brightest who had fled during the early days of imperial expansion. For 300 years, they had watched the Empire grow, enslaving species after species, while pretending to be nothing more than scattered human colonies. Captain, Rodriguez called out, Imperial command ship is moving. They're establishing a direct communication link with their planetary surface. Let them talk, Sarah replied. They'll figure it out soon enough. Through the quantum field manipulators, she could hear fragments of Imperial communications. Panic, confusion, desperate attempts to understand how their perfect defenses had been breached. They were asking all the wrong questions. Ma'am, Kim reported, we're receiving a tight beam transmission from the surface. It's encrypted. But our computers cracked their codes years ago, Sarah finished. Put it through. The voice of Emperor Cain thus filled the bridge, his words translated by advanced linguistic algorithms. The conversation between the Emperor and his admiral painted a clear picture of Imperial thinking. They still believed humans were the primitive species they'd encountered centuries ago. They have no idea, Park whispered. They think we're the same humans from the Outer Rim colonies. Those humans are our cousins, Sarah said firmly, and they've been suffering under Imperial rule for long enough. The Prometheus carried more than advanced technology. In its databanks lay the location of every Imperial weakness, every design flaw in their ships, every political fracture in their alliance. 3 centuries of careful observation had given humanity a complete understanding of their enemy. Captain, Rodriguez announced, long-range sensors are detecting movement throughout the system. They're calling in additional fleets. How many? At current count, 47 capital ships, 300 escorts, and at least 12 orbital defense platforms. Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly. Even with their technological advantages, the Prometheus was still just one ship against an entire empire. But that had always been the plan. Open a channel, she commanded. All frequencies. Kim's fingers flew across her console. Channel open, Captain. Sarah took a deep breath. The next words she spoke would echo across the galaxy, changing the balance of power forever. Imperial Fleet Command, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Prometheus. You know us as humans, but you've been watching the wrong humans for 300 years. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Across the Imperial fleet, she knew alarms were screaming as her words reached every ship simultaneously. We are not the miners and farmers you've been cataloging. We are not the primitive species you've dismissed. We are the descendants of Earth's greatest minds, and we've been preparing for this moment since the day you first enslaved our people. She paused, letting the implications sink in throughout the Imperial command structure. You want to know how we penetrated your defenses? You want to know how we appeared without detection? The answer is simple. We've had this technology for over a century. We've just been waiting for the right moment to use it. Commander Park activated the next phase of their plan. Throughout the system, quantum echoes began materializing, phantom images of human ships appearing at random coordinates, flickering in and out of existence like ghosts. What you're seeing now, Sarah continued, is a demonstration. Every Imperial ship in this system, every defense platform, every supposedly secure installation, we can reach them all. Your sensors can't track us. Your weapons can't target us. Your shields can't stop us. The phantom ships multiplied, filling the display screens of every Imperial vessel with false contacts that appeared completely real to their instruments. But we're not here to destroy you, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the void. We're here to make you an offer. The Imperial War Room had transformed into a scene from a nightmare. Display screens showed phantom human ships appearing throughout their most secure system. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of contacts that materialized and vanished like digital hallucinations. Admiral Vextar's 4 eyes darted between readouts, each one telling him something different. Status report. Are these ships real or sensor ghosts? Lieutenant Crechevier's tentacles worked frantically across multiple interfaces. Sir, our targeting computers can't get a lock. The contacts appear solid on passive sensors but disappear when we try active scanning. It's impossible, Commander Nexthor muttered, his scales shifting through a spectrum of distressed colors. No technology exists that can fool our entire sensor network. The human captain's voice continued to broadcast across all frequencies, cutting through their communications like a blade. 300 years ago, when your scouts first encountered human settlements, you made a critical assumption. You believed you had found all of humanity. Emperor Cain thus materialized as a hologram in the center of the war room. His golden face twisted with fury and confusion. Admiral, explain to me how a single human vessel has turned our capital system into a carnival of ghosts. Your Majesty, we're dealing with technology that shouldn't exist. These quantum signatures don't match anything in our databases. The human captain continued her transmission. While you were cataloging farmers and miners on the Galactic Rim, the real human civilization was developing in the void between stars. We watched you enslave our cousins. We watched you destroy entire cultures. And we prepared. Duchess Valnara appeared beside the Emperor's hologram, her serpentine form coiled with anxiety. This must be some kind of trick. Elaborate sensor spoofing, perhaps. Then why aren't our countermeasures working? Vextar snapped. We've activated every jamming system, every signal filter, every detection protocol. Nothing is having any effect. Count Jexmani's massive bulk materialized in the holoconference. Your Majesty, I'm reviewing classified intelligence files. There are gaps, unexplained phenomena near the Sol system dating back centuries. Our agents reported strange energy readings that were dismissed as natural stellar phenomena. You're telling me, the Emperor said slowly, that we've been ignorant of an advanced human civilization for 300 years? It appears so, sire. The human captain's voice cut through their conversation. Your offer is simple. Complete withdrawal from all human-settled worlds. Reparations for 3 centuries of slavery and genocide. And formal recognition of human sovereignty. The war room fell silent except for the steady ping of sensors trying to track untraceable contacts. The demands were staggering. The Empire would lose dozens of resource-rich systems, trillions of credits in forced labor, and their entire outer rim buffer zone. Unacceptable, Emperor Cain thus declared. Admiral, how quickly can we mobilize additional fleets? Sir, Vextar consulted his tactical displays. We have over 300 ships in system. If these phantom contacts are real threats, we're already outnumbered. If they're sensor tricks, we're fighting an enemy that can make us see whatever they want us to see. Your response time is irrelevant, the human captain continued, as if she could hear their private conversations. You're thinking in terms of conventional warfare, fleets and firepower. We stopped thinking that way centuries ago. One of the phantom contacts suddenly became solid on every sensor array, a massive human dreadnought materializing directly above the Imperial Palace. Then another appeared alongside the first. Then a third. Confirmed contacts, HFY shouted. 3 human vessels now showing solid mass readings directly over the planetary shield generators. Impossible, breathed Nexthor. Nothing can penetrate the planetary shields while they're active. Unless they were already there when the shields went up, Admiral Vextar realized with growing horror. Unless they've been there all along, hidden between dimensions. The human captain's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Your shields, Admiral, are designed to keep things out. They're not designed to keep things in that were never technically out to begin with. Emperor Cain thus felt the foundations of his empire cracking beneath him. If humans could position ships anywhere in his territory without detection, if they could exist in spaces between dimensions, then every Imperial installation was vulnerable. What do you want from us? He transmitted directly to the human ship. I told you, complete withdrawal, reparations, recognition. And if we refuse? The pause stretched long enough for doubt to creep into every Imperial heart. When the human captain spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you'll discover that hiding in the dark for 3 centuries taught us more than just stealth technology. You'll learn what happens when prey becomes predator. As if to emphasize her point, every phantom contact throughout the system suddenly synchronized their movements. Thousands of ghost ships moved in perfect formation, creating geometric patterns that spelled out coordinates, the exact locations of every Imperial military installation, every command center, every strategic resource depot. They know everything, Vextar whispered. Every base, every position, every weakness. The human captain's final words echoed through the war room like a death sentence. You have 48 hours to begin evacuation of human space. After that, we stop asking nicely. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial command structure in stunned silence. Outside the viewports, the 3 human dreadnoughts held position above the capital, patient as death itself. Admiral Vextar stared at the displays showing his mighty fleet surrounded by enemies they couldn't see, couldn't target, and couldn't understand. For the first time in his military career, he wondered if they had already lost the war before it began. The Emergency Council convened in the Emperor's private war chamber, a massive spherical room where holographic displays showed the current disposition of Imperial forces across the galaxy. Red markers indicated human settlements, suddenly revealed as enemy territory rather than conquered provinces. Status report. Emperor Cain thus commanded as the assembled leadership of the Empire materialized around the circular table. Admiral Vextar's image flickered with transmission static. Your Majesty, we've detected additional human ships throughout the outer systems. They're not hiding anymore. Current count stands at over 2,000 vessels. 2,000? Duchess Valnara repeated numbly. Where were they hiding 2,000 ships? Count Jexmani accessed classified databases with trembling claws. I've been reviewing our intelligence files on human space. Every anomalous reading, every unexplained energy signature, they were never natural phenomena. The humans have been operating a shadow fleet for centuries. Fleet Admiral Tezkoth, commander of the Empire's Second Fleet, leaned forward. His cybernetic implants glowed with data streams as he processed tactical information. Your Majesty, I must report that 3 of my patrol groups in the Altair sector have gone silent. Their last transmissions indicated human ships appearing without warning. Appearing where? The Emperor asked. Inside their formations, sire. The human vessels materialized in the center of our patrol groups and transmitted a simple message. Evacuate human space or be removed. The weight of the situation settled over the council like a suffocating blanket. The Empire's greatest strength had always been its overwhelming force projection, the ability to bring massive fleets to bear against any threat. But how could they fight an enemy that could appear anywhere, anytime, without warning? Military options? Emperor Cain thus asked. Admiral Vextar consulted his tactical officers before responding. Limited, Your Majesty. We can't target what we can't track. Our most advanced weapons require sensor locks that these human ships seem immune to. Every time we try to engage, they simply fade away. What about our intelligence networks? Surely we have agents in human space. Count Jexmani's bulk shifted uncomfortably. Sire, that's part of the problem. We've had surveillance assets monitoring the human colonies for decades. They're still there, still reporting. But they're watching farmers and traders, not military installations. You're saying the humans we've been watching are decoys? Not decoys, Your Majesty. Genuine human settlements. But apparently not the only ones. Dr. Velnari, the Empire's chief xenobiologist, activated her data displays. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from the human ships. The technology they're using requires an understanding of dimensional physics that exceeds our own knowledge by at least 2 centuries. Impossible, Fleet Admiral Tezkoth snorted. We conquered the Altarian Republic specifically for their advanced physics research. We have the best scientific minds in the galaxy. Had, Dr. Velnari corrected quietly. We had the best scientific minds. But human development apparently continued while we were cataloging them as primitives. Emperor Cain thus felt the throne room spinning around him. 300 years of imperial expansion, built on the assumption of technological superiority, suddenly seemed like a house built on sand. Economic impact? He asked. Minister Coxhell, the Empire's financial overseer, activated economic projections. Catastrophic, Your Majesty. Human space represents 37% of our agricultural output, 23% of our manufacturing capacity, and over 40% of our rare mineral extraction. Complete withdrawal would trigger system-wide economic collapse. Then withdrawal is not an option, the Emperor declared. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Admiral Vextar spoke. Your Majesty, with respect, we may not have a choice. The humans aren't making requests. They're issuing ultimatums. From a single ship? Sire, respectfully, it's not a single ship anymore. Our sensors now detect human vessels throughout the capital system. They're surrounding us. Emperor Cain thus activated the chamber's main display. The tactical overview showed the Zephyria system filled with human contacts. Red dots appearing in formations that seemed designed to mock Imperial defenses. Every shipyard, every orbital platform, every supply depot was bracketed by enemy vessels. How many? He asked. Current count. 417 confirmed contacts within the capital system alone. The number hit the assembled council like a physical blow. The Empire's home fleet numbered just over 300 ships. They were outnumbered in their own territory by an enemy they hadn't known existed. What are their intentions? Duchess Valnara asked. Have they made any hostile moves? No direct attacks, Admiral Vextar reported. But they've demonstrated their capability. 3 minutes ago, they simultaneously scanned every Imperial installation in the system. Not just surface scans, deep structural analysis. They know the layout of every ship, every building, every defensive system. They're mapping our weaknesses, Fleet Admiral Tezkoth realized. They already know our weaknesses, Count Jexmani corrected. They've been watching us for 3 centuries. Emperor Cain thus stood slowly, his ceremonial armor clicking softly in the silence. Around him, the greatest minds of the Empire waited for guidance that felt increasingly impossible to provide. Options, he said finally. I want every possible course of action, no matter how desperate. The council exchanged glances. Finally, Dr. Velnari spoke. Your Majesty, there is one possibility we haven't discussed. Which is negotiation. The word hung in the air like a curse. The Galactic Empire did not negotiate. Conquered, it ruled, it commanded. Negotiation implied equality, and the Empire had built its foundation on absolute superiority. But as Emperor Cain thus looked at the displays showing his capital system surrounded by ghost ships that could strike without warning, he began to consider the unthinkable. Outside the war chamber, the human dreadnoughts maintained their vigil, patient as the void itself, waiting for an answer that would reshape the galaxy. Outside the war chamber, the human dreadnoughts maintained their vigil, patient as the void itself, waiting for an answer that would reshape the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chun stood before the main display on the Prometheus, watching real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Imperial fleets were moving, but not toward human space. They were consolidating around core systems, pulling back from frontier positions they could no longer defend. Status report, she commanded. Phase 3 complete, Captain, reported Commander Park. All Imperial forces in human space have been tagged with quantum markers. We can track their movements regardless of stealth systems. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked up from the tactical station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Imperial Palace. It's Emperor Cain thus himself. Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and grim resolve. 300 years of preparation had led to this moment, the moment when the Galactic Empire would finally face the consequences of its expansion. Put him through. The Emperor's holographic image materialized on the bridge, his golden features tight with barely controlled fury. Captain Chun, I am prepared to discuss terms. I'm listening, Your Majesty. Partial withdrawal from contested systems. Increased autonomy for human colonies. Formal recognition of special status for your people. Sarah shook her head slowly. You're still thinking like an Emperor Cain thus. You're offering concessions instead of accepting reality. The reality, the Emperor snapped, is that despite your impressive technology, you remain vastly outnumbered. The Empire commands 12,000 capital ships across 800 systems. And we command the space between spaces, Sarah replied calmly. Every one of your ships, every installation, every world, we can reach them all. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is how much of your empire will survive the transition. To emphasize her point, she gestured to Commander Park, who activated the next phase of their demonstration. Throughout Imperial space, human ships began materializing simultaneously. Not dozens or hundreds this time, thousands upon thousands of vessels appearing in perfect formation around every major Imperial installation. Impossible, Emperor Cain thus breathed. 3,000 years of human history, Your Majesty. We've learned that the impossible just takes longer to achieve. The tactical display showed the scope of the revelation. Human ships surrounded the Empire's fortress worlds, their industrial centers, their military academies. The Shadow Fleet that had developed in secret was vast beyond Imperial comprehension. How many ships do you have? The Emperor asked quietly. Enough, Sarah replied. But numbers don't matter when you can't fight what you can't find. Your weapons, your sensors, your entire military doctrine, It's all built around conventional spacetime. We stopped being conventional centuries ago. Admiral Vexstar's voice cut into the transmission. Your Majesty, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. The human ships are charging weapons. Sarah raised her hand slightly, and the energy readings stabilized. Not weapons, Admiral. Construction systems. We're about to show you what we've really been building all these years. The space around Zephyria Prime began to shimmer with quantum distortions. Massive structures materialized from dimensional fold space, not ships, but installations. Orbital platforms that dwarfed anything in the Imperial arsenal. Manufacturing complexes that seemed to bend light around their edges. Defense networks that existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum shadow. What are those? Emperor Cain thus whispered. Stargates, Sarah explained. Permanent installations that allow instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the galaxy. While you've been building fleets to project power through hyperspace, we've been building infrastructure to bypass space entirely. The implications hit the Imperial leadership like a cascade of falling dominoes. If humans could establish permanent gateways anywhere in the galaxy, then distance, the Empire's greatest defensive advantage, meant nothing. You're not just offering us terms, Emperor Cain thus realized. You're reshaping the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Finally, Sarah said with a slight smile, you're beginning to understand. This isn't a war, Your Majesty. It's an evolution. The age of empires built on conquest and oppression is ending. The age of cooperation and mutual benefit is beginning. Dr. Velnari's voice crackled through the communication link. Captain, the energy requirements for those installations must be enormous. How are you powering them? Commander Park answered before Sarah could respond. Dimensional tap technology. We're drawing power directly from the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. Effectively unlimited energy. The silence that followed lasted nearly a full minute. Finally, Emperor Cain thus spoke. What exactly are you proposing? A new galactic order, Sarah replied. One where species work together instead of under the boot of conquest. Where technology advances through cooperation rather than theft. Where resources are shared rather than hoarded. And if we refuse? Sarah's expression hardened. Then you discover what 3 centuries of anger looks like when it's backed by technology you can't comprehend or counter. She gestured to Lieutenant Rodriguez, who activated the final phase of Operation Revelation. Throughout the galaxy, every Imperial military installation simultaneously received the same data package. Complete technical specifications for every Imperial ship design, weapon system, and defensive protocol. But more than that, the files contained detailed analyses of every weakness, every design flaw, every tactical vulnerability. We know how to defeat everything you have, Sarah continued. Every ship class, every weapon type, every defensive strategy. We've been studying you for 300 years, and we've designed countermeasures for every threat you could possibly pose. Admiral Vexstar's voice carried a note of desperation. Your Majesty, they're not bluffing. The technical data they've transmitted, it's more detailed than our own classified specifications. Emperor Cain thus felt the last pillars of his power crumbling beneath him. The Empire had always ruled through strength, through the promise that resistance was futile. But how could you resist an enemy that already knew every move you might make? Your terms, he said finally. State them clearly. Sarah took a deep breath. The moment she had trained for her entire life had arrived. Complete independence for all human-settled worlds. Reparations totaling 5 trillion Imperial credits to be paid over 20 years. Immediate cessation of all slave labor practices throughout Imperial space. Establishment of a galactic council with equal representation for all sapient species. Impossible, Duchess Valnara interjected. The economic disruption alone would destroy half the systems in the Empire. Then you should have thought of that before building your economy on slavery and exploitation, Sarah replied coldly. But we're not unreasonable. We're prepared to provide assistance. She nodded to Chief Petty Officer Kim, who activated another set of displays. These showed detailed plans for converting Imperial infrastructure from a conquest-based economy to a cooperation-based one. Our economists have spent decades developing transition plans, Sarah explained. Agricultural worlds can shift from forced labor to automated systems. Mining operations can be converted to sustainable extraction methods. Manufacturing centers can retool for civilian rather than military production. You've planned for everything, Count Jexmani said with something approaching admiration. We've had 300 years to plan, Sarah confirmed. 300 years to watch your empire grow, to study its systems, to understand its weaknesses. But more importantly, 300 years to develop better alternatives. Emperor Cain thus studied the data flowing across his displays. The human proposals weren't just demands for freedom, they were blueprints for transforming galactic civilization itself. Technologies that could eliminate scarcity, governmental structures that could prevent the rise of future empires, economic systems that rewarded cooperation over conquest. And if we agree to these terms, he asked, then humanity shares its knowledge freely. Dimensional technology, quantum manipulation, unlimited energy sources, all of it becomes available to every species in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Teskoth leaned forward. Captain, surely you understand that some of us will never accept these terms. There will be resistance. Sarah's expression grew sad. We know. That's why we've prepared for every contingency. The display screens shifted to show Imperial hardliners, military commanders, system governors, and corporate leaders who would likely attempt to fight rather than accept the new order. Detailed dossiers appeared for each one, showing their locations, their resources, and their probable strategies. We've identified every potential resistance leader, Sarah continued. Every system that might attempt to break away rather than reform. Every military unit that might refuse to stand down. We're prepared to deal with all of them. Deal with them how? Admiral Vextar asked. Preferably through negotiation and demonstration. But if necessary, Sarah paused, her voice taking on a harder edge. We'll remove them from the equation entirely. To emphasize her point, she activated tactical displays showing the positions of human ships throughout Imperial space. Every potential resistance stronghold was surrounded by overwhelming force. Every rebel leader was under direct observation. Every military asset that might be used against the new order was targeted and ready for elimination. You're not just demanding surrender, Emperor Cain thus realized. You're offering to enforce the peace yourselves. Someone has to, Sarah replied. The galaxy has spent too long under the rule of force. It's time for the rule of law. The communication channel fell silent as the Imperial leadership processed the magnitude of what they faced. This wasn't just the end of their empire, it was the end of the entire concept of empire itself. How long do we have to decide? Emperor Cain thus asked finally. The 48-hour deadline still stands for beginning evacuation of human space, Sarah replied. But for the larger questions, for choosing whether to be part of the solution or part of the resistance, you have as long as you need. And during that time, we wait, we watch, and we prepare for either outcome. Sarah gestured to her crew, and the quantum installations around Zephyria Prime began to withdraw into dimensional fold space. The massive human fleet followed suit, fading from normal sensors but leaving behind the clear impression that they could return at any moment. Captain, Emperor Cain thus called out as the transmission began to end. One final question. Yes. Why? Why offer cooperation at all? With your technology, you could simply conquer us as we conquered others. Sarah's smile was genuinely warm for the first time during the entire encounter. Because, Your Majesty, that's the difference between us and you. We learned that conquest only breeds more conquest. We chose a different path. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial leadership alone with the hardest decision in galactic history. Outside their viewports, space looked normal again, but everyone knew that appearance was deceiving. The humans were still there, waiting in the spaces between spaces, ready to emerge at any moment. The age of the Galactic Empire was over. What would rise in its place remained to be seen. In the silence of his throne room, Emperor Cain thus stared at the data packages the humans had provided. Plans for a better galaxy, technologies that could end scarcity, governmental structures that could prevent future wars. It was everything he had never known he wanted. The question was whether he had the courage to reach for it. #Galactic Empire panics. Who let a human dreadnought get this close?